afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the College of Social Sciences and Public Policy, welcome to this afternoon's Anderson Ashby Lecture on Public Policy Journalism. My name is John Mayo. I'm a professor in the department, and we are especially honored this afternoon to have Florence Ashby with us. It was Flo and Laird Anderson, her late husband, who established the lecture series in 2005. Laird was a distinguished reporter for the Wall Street Journal and later a professor of journalism at American University for many years. He was instrumental in recruiting many of our series' outstanding speakers over the last decade. And he is sorely missed on this occasion. I wish also to thank the Ruth K. and Shepard Broad Foundation of Miami, which is co-sponsoring this afternoon's program through the International Lecture Series, which it endowed at FSU in 1998. Our speaker this afternoon is known, I imagine all of you, for her insightful reporting on National Public Radio. Eleanor Beardsley is NPR's France correspondent. In that capacity, she reports on breaking stories and interprets developments throughout and often beyond the European continent. In this year alone, she has reported on the separatist conflict in eastern Ukraine, the terrorist attack on Charlie Hebdo, the French satirical magazine in Paris, the terrorist attack on Tunisia's National Bardo Museum, and most recently, the horrific crash of Germanwings Flight 9925 in the French Alps. She also covers all aspects of French society, its politics, economics, and culture. Last Sunday evening, after a 15-plus hour flight from Paris to Tallahassee, she filed a story on a proposal to combat anorexia among French models by requiring them to maintain a healthy weight and body mass. I'm sure some of you heard that. Previously, Eleanor reported extensively on the Arab Spring in Tunisia, and before that on the 2007 and 2012 presidential elections in France and the massive student demonstrations in 2006. Prior to moving to Paris in 2004, she worked for 3 years with the United Nations mission in Kosovo and as a television producer for the French broadcaster TF1 in Washington. The title of her talk this afternoon is My World in Paris. Please join me in welcoming.
But currently I'm on my most important mission, and I think you might recognize it. Anyway, I just want to say, first of all, I'm really honored to be an Anderson Ashby lecturer as part of this series. It's just a great honor. And I used to come to Florida a lot. My father is actually from Florida. He went to that other university in Gainesville, but don't hold it against me. So he's from Jacksonville. Anyway, it's great to be back in the state. It reminds me of my childhood. I've been very impressed by the students I've met and the faculty, and just especially the students. They are so on the ball, and I told them a lot more so than I was. So I'm just going to talk tonight just a little bit about the challenges facing France and Europe, and then how I sort of got into my job, which was sort of the backdoor road. I did not study journalism, and I did not start at the local paper. Kind of came to it really late. Anyway, so my greatest fear is to bore you, so I hope I don't. Anyway, so on Wednesday, January 7th, just a regular day in the morning, I was at the gym. Now, I have this weightlifting class called Body Pump that I don't miss. So I was there, and I saw a little flash on my telephone. It said, "Shootout at Charlie Hebdo." And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'll keep an eye on it, because Charlie Hebdo had published these Danish cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad several years before, and I thought, a couple minutes later, I get a call from the newscast unit of NPR Eleanor, we're hearing 10 people are reported dead. I was like, what? Because we don't have school shootings in France. You don't have these, like, all of a sudden people have been massacred situations usually. So I got right off my bike where I was warming up. I went straight home. I didn't even take a shower, threw on my clothes, jumped in the cab, and I was on the scene. I mean, the carnage was done, but it was horrible. There was still people being taken out on gurneys, and the whole scene was like roped off. The police were there, sirens. People had just come down out of the buildings just in a state of complete shock, and you can show this first picture. I've got some pictures that I don't want to show them all at once. These were 4 of the cartoonists killed. These were like very well known, just regular guys. They'd been in an editorial meeting, and these 2 guys came in and just killed them. We saw bloody pictures of the office after that. So this was it. I mean, you saw it on everybody's face. This was the attack on French soil that the government had been warning about. France has not been shy about fighting Islamist extremism. They went into Mali in 2012, where the country was taken over the whole north part by extremists, making people live horrible lives, public beheadings. French army went in and like ousted them. It was amazing. They're carrying out bombings of Islamic State with the U.S., so there had been a lot of threats against America. This was it, and you really felt it. We soon saw videos of the Kawachi brothers. They came out and they shot this one police guy. It was horrible. He was down on the ground and he was like this, and they just shot him in the head, and they screamed, "We've avenged the prophet." And they were just like this. And the whole country was just absolutely shocked, but people came together. And you can show a couple more. Resist. People came together. They were so angry because France had really been attacked. Nobody really liked this magazine. It had been sued by the Catholic organization so many times. They were crude. They were just, they couldn't even sell all their copies. But after this, everyone rallied because, they had attacked France in the heart of free speech. So after that, the next days, there was a manhunt. It was weird because I've covered like crises in foreign places. You're in a hotel. I was at home. I had to take my son to school in the morning. He couldn't go out for recess. They were keeping all the kids inside. It just felt surreal. Then we have this double hostage drama unfolding. We were there. They sent in Lauren Freyer from Spain. She's an excellent reporter and producer from London, and we all covered it just day and night and day and night. Even when it finished, we had to go out in the Muslim communities, the Jewish communities, because an armed guy also attacked a kosher supermarket, as you know, and killed people in there. Now I have 3 soldiers on my street guarding a Lubavitch synagogue, and this was France's worst nightmare. We can show some more of those pictures. But people poured out. Some of these crowds were just spontaneous the night of the Charlie Hebdo killings, just unbelievable. People were out talking. You can show the next one. I wanted to show you, so that's my street, 2 of the soldiers. There's now 3 of them out there. This is not the Charlie Hebdo that was on the cover of that famous issue, but this is one of the past ones. So this will show you, and they're even worse. So he's saying, this says the film that's setting the Muslim world on fire, and he's saying, "My buttocks, do you like my buttocks?" So this really, people in the other parts of the world, they couldn't understand this. I mean, all right, but it was amazing how France really came together on that. About 8 months earlier, I had been in the suburbs visiting this guy, 32-year-old Ibrahim, and he was a Frenchman. His parents were from Morocco, and his little sister, she sort of had learning disabilities, but her parents were really proud. She was in a vocational high school. She was going to be a pastry chef. She went to school. She was a senior in high school. She was the sweetest thing, the apple of her father's eye. She went to school, and she never came home because she went to Syria. And the family was absolutely destroyed. They just didn't know what to do. She's with Islamic State. And he was like, my father just, they can't get her back. Once you're there, you're gone. And these women go over, and once you get pregnant, that's how they hold you. God only knows what happens. He had been in sporadic contact with her. That's happened. 1,400 French people have gone to fight jihad. And they say more than 4,000 people across Europe. It's very easy. It's not like when people wanted to go to Afghanistan or Iraq. You just go to Turkey. It's like tourism. And they meet you there, and they take you to the border, and you're just in all of a sudden, and then you can't get out. And they have elaborate, social networks. They're recruiting on Facebook. This young woman her brother said she would go in her room and do Facebook a lot, and they found out that they had said, "You need to come to Syria and help the Muslim children, the poor children, and come save them." And that's how the guy got her. So France is dealing with this. All the European countries are dealing with this. This is a huge problem right now, and the biggest fear is what happened, that the people like the Kawachi brothers and Amadi Coulibaly, and one of the Kawachi brothers had been to Iraq, and there's been previous episodes, and they come back and they carry out these acts on the soil, and it's just absolutely horrible. I visited a mosque, one of Paris's biggest, and the Imam Sabri, I mean, he said, we're beside ourselves, we don't know what to do, and this is the worst thing. This is a new ideology. It's imported. It's Wahhabism. It's not French. They never had this problem before, you know. There's lots of Muslims living in France. It's the largest population in Western Europe, also the largest Jewish population, and all of these things are so new. They said there's a new professor of Islam. It's Professor Google, and he said these kids, they don't know anything. But what it is really is it's young, disaffected, angry men who feel isolated, who feel like they can't make it in society. It's the school shooter profile, you know? And so now the French government has passed laws where you can have your passport taken away. There's a hotline if you suspect someone in your family is radicalizing, so it's a huge issue right now. There were also soldiers living in that mosque because the Islamic, when these terrorist acts happen, the Muslims are the first to suffer. There was, since Charlie Hebdo, thousands of Islamophobic acts around France, you know, throwing things at mosques and all kinds of things like that. It's not just in Europe, it's in Tunisia. You saw just a couple weeks ago, the museum was attacked. I think it was around 20 tourists killed. I mean, another horrible attack. Tunisia has really been at the forefront of you know, this nascent democracy fighting with these radicals. And Tunisia is the only country that has come out of the Arab Spring with hope. Look at Syria, 4 years on. There's 2 million people displaced and 300,000 dead, they think. The war is still raging, and it's morphed into something that you can't even take a side. What side? Every side is bad, you know. Look at Libya, it's a failed state, and Egypt has just come full circle. It's a military dictatorship again. So, you know, Tunisia needs to work for the Arab world and for the whole world, and for Europe too, because it's so affected by this. Now, I covered the revolution in Tunisia, the first Arab Spring revolution, and that was really my first taste of conflict reporting. And I remember I was in France listening to all these reports that Tunisians were protesting, and it was really huge, you know. And I said to my editor, now, who do we have in Tunisia? And he said, nobody. Why don't you pitch to go? But I was kind of scared because my husband, who's a French journalist, he's been to a lot of places, and he's been doing it for years, and he's only been thrown out of one country, and that's Tunisia. So I was really kind of nervous. But I said, okay, I'm going to go. So I went. I didn't even know. I didn't need a visa, I was told, because it used to be touristy. I got my equipment. I couldn't hide it, so I flew in. And I was so nervous waiting at the customs. I said, well, what's the worst they can do? They can put me back on a plane. They're not going to throw me in jail. So I had to fill out the form. What are you? I said, fixer, events planner, producer. And the guy looks at me and goes, are you a journalist? I said, yeah. And he goes, welcome to Tunisia. And he just gave me this big smile. And I was like, I just felt he wants me here. You know, there's people who want us here. So that was really good. We drive into the city. This is one of the billboards. This is actually the next day when the people poured out in the street. But this is one of the billboards that were quickly ripped down. But what's so striking when you go into a dictatorship is that there's pictures of the dear leader everywhere, and it's just freakish. It's just... So anyway, I get to my hotel, and he's speaking that night. Zine el-Abidine bin Ali. Now, that you think that's a hard name? I'll never forget it in my life. I've said it like 100,000 times. Anyway, I grab a waiter at the hotel, and that was another thing. I spoke French. I was in. Everybody speaks French there, so... What an amazing payoff for learning a language, even though I say it took me 25 years. But, I mean, I was in this Arab country, and I could actually understand it, you know. So the waiter translated, and he was so nervous. I could see that this was big. So later that night, there's people coming out in front of our hotel, just the main sort of drag in Tunis, and they're all for Ben Ali, and it's like so weird. I was talking to the Middle East editor. I said, this is weird. I thought they didn't like him, you know. It was all confusing. But then even if you didn't know much about it, and I didn't know that much, you realize when you ask 20-year-old guys, so why do you like the leader? And they say, because he gives us bread. You're like, that's weird. Isn't this a Facebook movement? Why are they talking about bread? That was like 19th century, you know. And then there'd be an ominous-looking sort of guy behind them. So it was kind of obvious that these people were paid to come out or, you know. So the next day, no, this is still just this picture. I was in the hotel getting ready, and boom, I just heard this rumble coming down the street. And I went out, and it was just masses of people, all of civil society. There were judges with their, their robes. There were parents, there were children, there were old people. And this was the real Tunisia. You knew it, you felt it, and they were out all day. And it was so exhilarating. Those are the people, and they were like, dégage, get out, Ben Ali. And it was just, I would go out and talk to him, I would go file, and it was just fantastic. Until the riot police finally came, and boom, boom, you heard the tear gas firing, and that was scary. I mean, I wasn't scared until then, because when a crowd starts to move, that is scary. And then they shut our hotel doors, and I remember being outside just screaming like, I'm staying here, and there's like a whole mass of people. And the tear gas was coming, and one reporter died that day, a poor French photographer, because he got a canister right in the eye. And and so then they opened the doors just in time, but we still got gassed. And I mean, I've gotten, whiffs of tear gas in Paris, but oh my Lord, this just shut me down. Completely doubled over. You can't open your eyes, you can't see. I was staggering up the stairs to my room. All I could think of was, please, I gotta put my head in the sink, which I finally did. Then, I looked out the window, I could see the riot police beating like young people with truncheons. It was really horrible. I mean, nobody knew what was gonna happen. And then I heard a knock on my door. And I was like, okay, and I opened it, and I'm looking right into the eyes of this young man, and he just looks petrified. And he said, can I hide in your room? And it was just that one split second, you know that like you're not allowed to take him in your room, because A, he could hurt you, your father's gonna kill you, but beyond that, NPR's gonna kill you, it could compromise your reporting, but it's like a split-second decision between you and God, you just gotta decide. And I thought, I've just seen them beating people like him. I said, yeah, come in. So he came in, and I quickly realized he was a lot more scared than I was. He was hiding in the bathtub. And I said, I gotta work, and I just worked, and he hid. I didn't pay attention to him. So Ben Ali left that night. People were jubilant. I've been back 10 times, okay? For days, the army came, the army were the heroes. People were getting pictures of their kids on the tanks, and people were wrapped in the flags, and it was just, I've never seen anything like it. I've been back 10 times. I've watched the country struggle. They've written a constitution. They have this secular element. They have this religious element, but they've really worked it out. Yes, their economy's bad, but they're really working it out. It's an incredible place. It's not at all scary. And let's see, go for the next. So I'm walking by this. I'm like, what are all these people gathered around? It was just, what's going on there? It's just a bookshop, and the woman has put out all the banned books. And I interviewed the bookstore owner. I had seen her out the day before protesting. She said, I'm not opening my shop until he goes. And she told me what it took to get a book. This was a banned book, The Regent of Carthage, about the dictator's wife, Layla. Everyone, I think she was more hated than he was. She had 11 brothers. They ran the country like their personal fiefdom. You had to pay them off for everything. They ran every business. So this, I'm going to play you a story, because this, go to the next picture, let me show you real quick. Their mansions were all over Tunis and all over the country were looted. And that's me by the pool of one. And my great friend, who's now a great friend, Munir, he's an English professor at University of Tunis. He took me and my friend Vivian from Time magazine on a tour. We went through the mansions, and he was just so prolific, and so I did a story on that. I think it was one of my best stories. It was just an amazing time and place. So I'm going to play that for you really quickly.
And I'm Alyssa Block. Tunisia's new interim government was on shaky ground today as 4 cabinet ministers resigned and more threatened to do so. The departures came in protest over the continued presence in the government of allies of the ousted dictator Zine el-Abidine Ben Ali. Tunisians want a complete break from his rule. They say the former president, and in particular his wife and her family, abused their power and enriched themselves at the expense of the Tunisian people. From Tunis, Eleanor Beardsley reports.
4 days after the overthrow of Tunisia's dictator, this is the scene in an upscale suburban neighborhood of Tunis called La Marsa. A whitewashed villa has been laid to waste by looters. Even though there's nothing more to take away, hundreds of people still come every day to visit the wrecked shell. The house belonged to businessman Moaz Trabelsi, one of the 10 brothers of the president's wife, Layla Trabelsi.
This is the thieves' house, robber's house.
That's Munir Khalifa, an English professor at the University of Tunis, and my guide through the pillaged mansions of the Ben Ali Trabelsi clan today. The swimming pool has a mattress floating in it. The yard is littered with broken furniture and women's magazines. Tunisian families are walking through the villa's empty, trash-strewn rooms as if it were a real estate open house. Khalifa says Tunisians despise the president they deposed, but they hate his wife even more. The 55-year-old former hairdresser is 74-year-old Ben Ali's second wife. She and her 10 brothers wrapped themselves around almost every sector of the country's economy, say Tunisians. They controlled the car dealerships, the banks, the airlines, the media, and the major retailers. 37-year-old Amel Jertila, who started her own company, says doing business in Tunisia was hell.
It was terrible, and you are scared all the time. What if I cross them one day in my life? What will happen to me? After years of work, maybe one day I will meet them in a coffee shop. We are scared of phantoms called Trabelsi and Ben Ali.
Cables from the U.S. ambassador in Tunisia that surfaced on WikiLeaks paint a picture of a family that lived in excessive decadence while many Tunisians lived below the poverty line. Invited to dinner at the villa of Ben Ali's favorite son-in-law, the ambassador described ice cream imported from Saint-Tropez on a private jet and a pet tiger in a cage on the compound. Just 3 days before the final wave of protests that brought Ben Ali down, writer Abdelaziz Belkhoja took the risk of distributing documents showing the extent of what he calls the mafiosa activity of the president, his wife, and her family.
It reached unimaginable proportions. These people wanted to take over the country. That's why they took the banks and the media. She appointed the ministers because after his death, she wanted to keep control of the country.
In its 2 decades in power, Belkhoja estimates that Ben Ali and his extended family stole about $20 billion, twice Tunisia's national budget. Our last stop is a magnificent balconied villa on a hillside, the home of a simple primary school teacher, whose name happens to be Ado Trabelsi. Inside the house, Tunisians are ripping out wiring and trying to detach some electric blinds from the windows. Everyone is smiling and laughing. My guide, Munir Khalifa, says no one in their wildest dreams would have imagined such a sudden and ignominious collapse of the Ben Ali Trabelsi family.
We suspected that tyrannical power is weak, but to this extent, this kind of weakness is just amazing. I think if there is one lesson to be learned, it is precisely that. Dictatorships, they are giants with feet of clay.
For NPR News, I'm Eleanor Beardsley in Tunis.
Voila, and then the last picture. That's the guy.
What did Hamlet say while pondering whether to put a ring on his single lady friend? To Beyonce or to
Beyonce.
For more puzzles, word games, and trivia, check out Ask Me Another at npr.org.
Sorry. That's okay. We didn't practice enough. Wait, not the story, just the picture. Sorry. She knows what she's doing. Because this is Rafet Moussa, the guy who hid in my room with my son, and that's during the Tunisian elections. He was from like a rich, upstanding family, so he was not dangerous, and he was wonderful. And I finally got back in touch with him, and he goes, "It's you," because he had lost my card. He said, "I've been waiting for you," and his mother like cooked me a big dinner, and because I saved her son. Everyone was scared. I mean, he probably would have been okay, but anyway, so it turned out fine.
What did your editor say?
I got in trouble, but actually what I did is, because I could not kick him out, because somebody said, "You've got to get him out of your room." I said, "I can't. I'm not going to get him out of my room." So I went and spent the night in another room. So I worked all day, but I spent the night with another journalist friend. I left him in my room, and that way he could have my room, and that's what I did. My father was furious, but I said, "But you always told us to do the right things." Okay, so that's one, everything that goes on in the Arab world really affects Europe. Immigration, that's a whole other story. There's another story going on the eastern edge of Europe that I've been covering. Ukraine, and two ideologies, and the Cold War is playing out there, and it is frightening. That's recently, these two women, their mother and daughter, just a tiny village, but there was a huge, horrible fight out, and there's burned out APCs in their village, and it was just destroyed. They were in the basement for hours, and I put them in a story. That's me about to go out on a report with my bulletproof vest on. I also had a helmet on, but I didn't put it on yet. Anyway, So I'm going to play you one more story with that. I remember the first time I touched down in Donetsk, and you know that's the eastern town, the separatist capital. It was the most beautiful airport. It was light and airy, and because they redid it for the 2012 Soccer Cup. And I remember tweeting, "Oh, this airport's so much better than Washington Dulles because my phone hooks right up to the internet, and boom, you know, I'm always trying to get the Wi-Fi in Dulles Airport, and it says it's free, it's not free, it never works. So in Donetsk, it just hooked right up. I remember tweeting that. The top floor of that airport just fell on the last Ukrainians about 3 weeks ago, I read. It's just, you know, as this city totally just fell apart. It's been racked by fighting. So that airport is flattened. I watched that city descend into anarchy and chaos. So that's my first picture, yeah. Slowly destroyed by these thugs that was run by the last time I was there. It would be hard to report there sometimes as an American because they were so convinced that you were going to lie about what was happening. I would hear Pravda all the time, Pravda, you know, truth, and they would say, one old man said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I can't talk to you because you're American, you're going to twist everything I say, and you're not going to tell the truth." And it becomes very exhausting, but you say, "I'm just going to put on what you tell me," but you know, people are always checking you, and it's just very, very stressful. The Russian media there, my fixer was from Donetsk and spoke Russian, like most people do, and he said, you know, we would watch some of they've cut out all the other broadcasts, everything else has been taken off, and it's not like Fox or MSNBC who are slanting a story, or they just show footage from some other war or anything. They completely lie. It's really scary, and that's one reason for Putin's huge support. Another reason is that I think the West didn't realize what was going on. The West was very stupid. First of all, NATO should not be, Ukraine can never be part of NATO. I love Ukraine, and I hope it's really a wonderful country. Kiev's a wonderful place, but imagine if Russia would be up in Mexico or Canada. So I don't think that was a good idea. And the EU didn't see anything coming when they were going to sign this, you know, economic agreement with Ukraine. But you know, Putin was about ready to explode because he wants Ukraine to be in his world. But the European Union didn't even see that. So when that deal, you know, that's how Maidan started, because Yanukovych was forced to cancel the deal. And then, you know, this Maidan in Kiev, this uprising that we see as noble, the people in the East see it as a revival of Nazism, fascism. They really do. And even before the propaganda, there's always been this East-West divide in Ukraine. So I would go there and people would say, why is America supporting the fascists? And they said, you guys started that in Maidan. They really believe that. It's you know, I tried to tell one woman, why would we, you know, come on D-Day and then support them 70 years later? It doesn't make sense. Okay, so last May, so you can go to the second picture, I guess. Okay, that's in the village, that woman's village. That's me with a selfie in front of this burned out APC. But this is like, there's so much propaganda around. Look at this, it's kind of this romantic art, you know. This poster says 1918, that was the revolution. 1941, that's when the Nazis invaded, and 2014, you know. Protect your fatherland. There's all these things that have to protect your fatherland. It's really frightening. So when I was there in May, last May, it was still a regular town. There were people out. Donetsk was pretty. There was like a central pedestrian street, and there was the town hall that was occupied, and that was kind of ugly because there would be people drinking, and then, you know, just all of these people who you realize they didn't really have anything to do in real life, and all of a sudden they had some power. We'd sit out at night at our hotel. We'd see a truck with Grad rockets drive up the street. There was a Soviet military veteran, Jan. He'd sit out every night and talk with us, and he hated what happened in Maidan. He left Kiev then, and he said, Ukraine is a fake country. And so there are people who really feel that way. And so it's a fascinating place, but it doesn't feel real. And in fact, it's so absurd. It feels like some sort of Mad Max place. You can go to the next picture. That's some Putin toilet paper in Kiev that you can get. This is just, that's me with a class in Kiev, and a lot of the kids were refugees from Donetsk, and it was just a wonderful literature school, and they were just so eloquent. They all spoke perfect English, and this is a family in Donetsk, and they've been hiding in their basement, and it's the grandmother and 3 kids, and they were so angry at the Ukrainian army, which you can understand because they'd been being bombed, but anyway, so you say, is this for real? This is the biggest standoff since the Cold War, and the talk about are the Russians there or not? The Russians are there, for sure. I mean, and you just say, really? Is this real? This is phony. But it's all too real, actually. And that's another story I wanted to play. I went out with the Organization for Security and Cooperation with Europe to check on the ceasefire, which was sort of holding, but there was always that firing near the airport. We didn't really want to go near the airport, but we said, okay, we can come back if we want to turn around. I have a security person when I go to the east, everybody does, and we had on our gear. Of course, I didn't have my helmet on. Anyway, and this is kind of what happened, so.
Some people can return to their homes.
Violations of that ceasefire means other people can't.
Fighting continues around a separatist stronghold, the city of Donetsk. Pro-Russian insurgents control that town and want to take the airport.
Artillery fire from that battle has been landing in residential neighborhoods. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley had a look.
We followed a team from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the multinational group that's monitoring this ceasefire. Riding through the empty streets of Donetsk, we had an official escort from local police officers of the Donetsk People's Republic. That probably gave us an unwarranted sense of security, though we were wearing helmets and flak jackets. Turning onto a residential street a mile or so from the airport, we stopped by a building that was smoking and still on fire. It happened to be in Interpreter Pasha's neighborhood.
It's my block.
Are you serious, Pasha?
No, my house is there, but it's a market. It's a public market.
Barely had we gotten out of the car to take a look when... How do I get out of here? We're going. Let's go. Oh, God. Everyone scrambles and jumps back in their cars, and our driver seems frozen, and then... A second blast rocks our car. Pasha yells at the driver to snap out of it and move. It turns out those mortar shells landed less than 200 yards from us. So much for the ceasefire. Earlier, we visited the village of Novokaterinov.
That's the two women I'm talking to here.
Battle at the end of August. 2 burned out Ukrainian tanks still lie by the side of the road. The people here endured even worse shelling for 5.5 hours, cowering in their basements. Svetlana Dudinova and her daughter are picking through the rubble of her 83-year-old parents' destroyed house. Dudinova describes the horrors of that day when she says the shelling started at 9 in the morning and went straight into the afternoon. She says her parents were in the basement of this house the whole time.
We're all still afraid, but Grandma is petrified. She runs into the basement now every time she hears any kind of noise. She thinks it's a shell.
The peace agreement signed in Minsk, Belarus 10 days ago stipulates that the eastern areas of Ukraine will receive greater autonomy from Kiev, yet remain within the country. But separatist leaders here now say they want their own country, the Donetsk People's Republic. The east of Ukraine is carved up into areas controlled by separatists and government troops. You're forced to pass through numerous checkpoints when you want to get from place to place, and you never know which side will be manning them. Separatist fighters check our IDs at this checkpoint coming into Donetsk. They make us get out of the car. Interpreter Pasha tries to engage in small talk with the soldiers to lighten the tension. Back in the village of Novokaturinovka, there hasn't been running water or electricity for a month. Dudinova and her daughter, Claudia Fedorashko, are pulling buckets of water from a well. So which side do they support in this conflict, I ask? Neither side. We have no preference whatsoever, they say. We just want peace. We don't know who and when that will be, but we are all so tired of this. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Novokaturinovka, Ukraine.
So these guys, believe it or not, are fighters with the separatists. I mean, can you believe this? And there's this like, and then the next picture. This is at one of the checkpoints, okay? You can see young guys like this who are whatever. And then this guy, you know what? He was from the siege of Leningrad, 90-something years old. So you got to respect that man. Whatever he believes, that's okay. But, you know, young people like this. So you'd meet all kinds at the barricades. But a very scary place. That story was, actually, I had the women, and then I thought, okay, I'll go with the team of inspectors and just thinking I'm going to get some just inspecting. I had no idea that was going to happen. There was kind of 3 miracles, because actually 6 civilians died in that exact place that day. That was the first miracle, that we weren't hurt. And the second was that my recorder was running the whole time. I didn't even look, like it was beyond recording. Usually the door usually pops open and it stops, but my son made me a little bracelet, one of those rubber band ones, you know, and I wrapped it around it before. And then the third miracle is that I didn't curse worse than what I said, because I was quite impressed with that one. Anyway, so I titled this lecture "My World from Paris" because I always felt, for me, Paris was like the center of the world, because it just, you felt the currents of Africa, the Middle East, just everything that I didn't hear about in South Carolina. So I loved that about it, and I've been there 10 years and I still feel that way. I love reporting on the rural areas, the villages, the history, the dog poo on the streets of Paris. I did a whole story on that once with the inspectors that are supposed to be fining people, and I even went twice with them, determined, because where I live, I don't know who's picking up, but it seems nobody. But when I went with them, everybody we came across picked up. And they'd say, okay, here's the profile that doesn't pick up. You know, it's the guy on the cell phone smoking the cigarette with 2 little dogs. He's not going to pick up. Well, he picked up that day anyway. So, and then another, I love to cover food. I mean, the French relationship with food is just wonderful. I mean, it's just like this lifelong relationship that starts young, and actually things are changing in America. I know some of you will remember, I mean, I grew up in the 70s where we ate, you know, iceberg lettuce, which I actually like again, but Vienna sausages, you remember these things, but things are changing, because I've had some very good food since I've been in Tallahassee. Very, very good food, yeah. So, but anyway, I remember I had to laugh. I went to pick up my son at daycare. He was 2.5, and they said, he's not feeling well today. He barely touched his leg of lamb. So I think that was one of my most popular stories. I went back and I'd take him every day, and I'd smell the food wafting out of the kitchen. And I talked to my French friend who lives in Alexandria, Virginia, Benedict, and she was so furious. She said, do you know what my daughter gets at school? She said, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And she said, with the crust cut off and frozen. I was like, oh my God. So I did a story on that. I love covering France, you know, just the stories on people. And I have some last pictures to show. One of the most touching places I go is Normandy. And I went to the 70th anniversary this year. These are 3 old D-Day veterans who came back. And this guy in the middle, the French family, he met the mother in her yard when his plane landed. And she hid him or something, and then the kids were still there. They were grown up and they were crying, and they meet, and they lost touch for many years, but they met again. This husband and wife were both living in this village the day the Americans came in and liberated it, and they're still living there. I know, it's amazing. Anyway, and there's so many people. This is Joseph, he's French, and his son, I forget his name, Ludovic or something. There's so many French people there who just, I mean, the memory of D-Day is just like, you know, it's just revered, and they come back and they dress up like GIs and they drive around and they adopt the graves in the American cemetery where people don't come anymore. Some of the, you know, many people, their families are gone, so you can adopt a grave, and he's adopted a grave of a soldier from Arizona, and he's looking for their family actually. And I did a story on that, and it's really beautiful. They bring flowers, and I went with a guy once. He read a poem. He was crying at the grave, and they really, really take it personally. And it's just one of my favorite places to cover. I go many times, but I never get tired of it. And the last thing I was going to say is just, I was going to give some advice to students, but there's a lot of non-students here, I see, but which is nice. Thank you for coming. Just to say that, you know, I became a journalist really earning my living at it full-time at 40. I hope you get your act together before that, but don't feel pressure like you need to go out at 22 when you graduate, get that perfect job and make that big salary, because what you need to be doing is, I mean, you can do that too. If you can do that, more power to you. But, you know, build your life. Think about meaningful jobs that are going to, maybe you don't know what you're going to do. I had no idea. But I knew that I didn't want to do some sort of job. So I worked in Congress at first, which eventually got me a job in journalism because I knew the U.S. Capitol. I knew the political system. It was with a French TV, and it was during an election year. So the combination of French and that. So build the blocks so that you get the good job you really want at 30, because that's going to be the good job, or 33. Dare to imagine things happening. For example, I did my first radio stories. I bought radio equipment. I was working as a TV producer, but I went to Kosovo and visited a friend, and I had 3 pieces on the air because I went there as a foreign correspondent. I had pitched to the World, WGBH in Boston. They take freelance, and they said, well, have you ever done radio? I said, well, no, but I've done TV. which was kind of true, but I was not the journalist. I was kind of stuck it was a great French TV station, but I was never going to be the journalist. So dare to imagine, I went there, I found incredible situations, and I came home and I had 3 stories on the air because Milosevic got voted out and he fought it, and it happened to be then. Who knew? But I was in the right place, so, it can happen. Take risks. When I went to Tunisia, would I have ever been sent to Tunisia? Never. I was not the person they were going to send to cover an Arab revolution. I did food stories from Paris, but now it's on my beat. So differentiate yourself, learn a language. What can you do to sort of build a different kind of profile? You don't have to go to, be top of your class or go to the best schools. I mean, you can make it happen, and it can be, you're never done learning either. You're never done learning. I graduated with a minor in French, but I didn't tell anybody because I was scared they would speak French to me because I didn't speak. I could read it, and I could understand a bit, and so I kept working on it. You just keep working on it, and I loved going there. So, yeah, I finally got to Paris, and at 40, started earning my living as a journalist, and it worked out. And so I would just say, make your life, make your luck, go out there and do it. You can do it, and I'm so impressed by the students I've met. So good luck, and thank you for having me, and that's about it.